I've got a joke for you.
Okay, let's have it.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Icon.
Icon who?
I can tell you another knock knock joke. You want me to?
Sure.
Okay, knock knock.
Knock knock, who's there? I don't know why I said knock knock, who's there, but who's there?
Jeez. Icon.
Icon who?
I can tell you another knock knock joke. You want me to?
Hello, welcome to a special edition of HatTrick. I'm Jordan Dowler-Coltman. I'm joined by Braydon Dowler-Coltman, and we are without Elliot Tanti at this time as he is in Europe, which is why this is a special edition of HatTrick. We're calling this the NHL Icons edition. Are you ready for this, Braydon?
More than ever.
Do you even know what we're doing?
Not really.
Okay. Let me explain what we're going to do. This is a special episode. We're not following the normal format of 3 topics that we sort of dig into all together. We're going to try to do a couple of these special edition things. We used to do a sort of like fun little segment. We did it once, at least I shouldn't say we used to. We did it once. A fun little segment where we tried to debate the greatest hockey player of all time, and we each picked someone and debated them, and we were going to do it for other sports and just never got around to it. So maybe we'll do some of those as these kind of special editions. This one's a little bit different, where we're going to dig into all 31 teams in the NHL really quickly. We'll try to keep it nice and concise because I'm sure there'll be some debate. But basically what we're going to do is do a rundown of the 31 teams in the NHL. We're going to pick each team's most iconic player of all time. This isn't the best player or who had the most points or who's the most notorious or whatever, but this is, or even like who played the most games. This is strictly that one player that when you think of a team, you most... it's sort of the most iconic whomever of all time for that team. So who's the most iconic Maple Leaf, and who's the most iconic Oiler, and who's the most iconic, Florida Panther of all time. Okay. Some of them I think are pretty easy. Some of them are going to be a little bit trickier, but we're going to do a rundown. How do you think you're going to do here, Braydon? You think you got a player for every team, or there's some teams you just have no idea?
Well, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Franchises. Now, is it strictly to the city where they played, or is it the franchise where in which the player was associated? Joe Sakic played for multiple teams. True,
that's very true. So I think what we're going to try to do is stick with the 31 teams as they exist. I think the only team that's in question is the Winnipeg Jets, because do we want to consider
the Vegas Golden Knights?
Well, the Vegas Golden Knights is expansion, right? So they still exist. They still have a most iconic player. They just have less time for that player to have existed. But my point is with the Winnipeg Jets, do we want to go back in time and accept the old Winnipeg Jets and separate them from the Arizona Coyotes? Or do we consider that... Okay, so the most iconic Winnipeg Jet could be the modern era or the original WHL into... Okay, all right. That's how we're going to do it.
We all know the Atlanta Thrashers' best player, our most iconic player, was Ilya Kovalchuk.
Okay, that's fair. I would have gone with Danny Heatley.
Ooh.
Okay, that was a bonus one.
I forgot about that guy.
Yeah, there you go. See, this is what I think is going to happen.
I think the whole NHL fan base forgot about that guy.
They probably like to. Okay, here's what we're going to do to make this a little bit streamlined. We're going to break this down by division. So we're going to start out with the Atlantic Division. We'll go by them alphabetically by division. And basically, I'm just going to say a team's name, and you're going to tell me who you think their most iconic player is. If we agree, perfect, check. On to the next. If we don't, we got to dig in, okay? Let's start with Boston. Good. The Boston Bruins, one of the original 6. Who is the most iconic Boston Bruin of all time?
Bobby Orr, flying in the air.
I don't even think it's a question.
Yeah, there's statues of him.
That's fair. Let's go to the Buffalo Sabres.
Whew. I'm going to have to go with Dominik Hasek.
See, and that's what I said too. A lot of people probably would have gone further back and could have gone with like
Matt Barnaby.
No, not Matt Barnaby. You're just thinking the opening credits of NHL 99. No, but Pat LaFontaine, and anyway, I think Dominik Hasek is, because I think like he sort of defined that moment when the Buffalo Sabres were like the most relevant. They made it to the Stanley Canals. If it weren't for Brett Hall's toe, they'd be champs, right? Okay, Dominik Hasek, the Dominator, Buffalo. The Detroit Red Wings, this is like a no-brainer.
Ooh, yeah. Well,
they've had a lot of good players.
Steve Yzerman gets a really, really close, second, but Gordie Howe is undoubtedly.
Number 9, Gordie Howe. That's easy. Okay, here's an interesting one. When I was thinking about it, this is the one I had a little bit more trouble with, not only because I have very little sort of reference, having never really cared about this team, but the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers had sort of tricky. A 90s heyday.
Right.
And that was really their only sort of huge success. But, they've had some interesting players go through.
Still, though, when I think of the Florida Panthers, it's Bobby Lou. I only see Roberto Luongo.
I agree. I think a lot of people probably would say Pavel Bure, but I think that falls into the category of, like, most prolific scorer or something.
He's also... Yeah, that's true.
But
Didn't he play for the Canucks? Or was that Valerie?
Oh, yeah, no. Pavel played for the Canucks, yep, 94. Yeah, I think Roberto Luongo is who I would go with, too. I think he started his career there. He left and he went home. He sort of is like, it's a little bit like Ryan Smith in Edmonton, which is definitely not who I'm picking for the Oilers. But there's an element of like, you felt like that was a team his heart was always kind of with, and I think that's the same with Luongo, right?
Totally.
Okay, so we'll go with Roberto Luongo for Florida, and now we go to probably the most difficult team when it comes to like the number of high caliber players, the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, there's like almost 10 decades. Every single decade has an iconic player, if not like a handful of them.
Maybe because of that, we should have a separate show that just outlines the Canadiens and most iconic players.
Oh, we certainly know Grandpa Coltman would enjoy it.
I was gonna say.
He could be the third host. Who for you, though, is the most iconic Canadian?
It's the hockey sweater. It's the Rocket. It's Maurice Richard.
I think it has to be. I mean, a lot of people probably would say like
Guy Lafleur,
or even I just
Marc
think
Bergevin.
No, it's definitely not Marc Bergevin.
Like definitely iconic.
Yeah, no, but they've had so many of them, right? I mean, you could even say
That's
that like Ken Dryden's on that list, and
totally.
I don't know. I think Maurice Richard is too, because like if you think of Mount Rushmore for the NHL, he's on it, isn't he? Just in terms of impact, right? And his career wasn't as long as Okay, I'm going with.
Yeah, but it was pivotal for.
I'm going with Maurice
for
Rocket Richard. Number 9, Rocket Richard.
Yep.
Okay. And I mean this with no disrespect to all of the Ottawa Senator fans who I'm sure flock to our podcast, but it's not like there's a very deep list with the Ottawa Senators. I think this one's a pretty no-brainer too. Who's the most iconic Ottawa Senator of all time?
I'm trying to think a little bit further back than Erik Karlsson, but it's Danny Heatley. Oh no, Danny Alfredson. That's got to be it.
100%. I think it has to be Alfredson.
Forgive me, Ottawa Senators fans, for my.
Didn't he play for Ottawa? He did play for Ottawa. At least you picked the right team.
Yeah, for like a few years.
Because there was like an Oiler deal that fell through.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Where was he coming from? Atlanta or was he in Anaheim? No, he wasn't in Anaheim then.
No.
Did he ever play in Anaheim?
No. Oh, he played in Minnesota.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyway. Okay.
Danny Heatley.
Tampa Bay.
What a guy.
Tampa Bay's had one or two really like star-studded teams, but is there a standout one guy who is like the face of that franchise?
Well, there is currently, and he might be that guy. But it's funny because we weren't allowed to name Steve Yzerman in the Detroit section. Like, I want to be able to say Steve Yzerman. Obviously, he doesn't play for them. But he put, that team together.
Yeah, we're going to go with players, though, who actually put the jersey on.
Okay. Like, I want to go with Dave Andreychuk, but I think it's going to have to be Steven Stamkos.
Really? See, I would have gone with Vinny LeCavalier, because he was there with them when they won the Stanley Cup.
You know what? You're right. It's so... I concede. It's Vinny. Martin St-Louis comes in a close second there. I don't know why I forgot about him.
But you're right. Stamkos is right up there,
left.
too.
He went to Philly. And
Stamkos could have left. He could have pulled a John Tavares and left. He stayed. So Stamkos, for me, is number 2. I think it goes LeCavalier, Stamkos, St-Louis. That's just my opinion. And then maybe even Habby Boulin.
Yeah, not so much for me. He ruined everything for me.
Fair enough. Okay, this is probably number 2 on the list of most difficult teams to dig into, because obviously a very sort of long lineage of iconic players. Not a huge amount of Stanley Cup winning success recently, but certainly if you dig back enough, there's a few of them. Who is the most iconic Toronto Maple Leaf? This could have people debating. Like, this could be its own show too. right? Because you could go decade by decade, and and the other thing is, I mean, it's sort of the center of the hockey universe. So much attention is paid. So many players who probably on other teams wouldn't have been as iconic became iconic being there, right?
Right.
Like when I brought this up with Larisse, the first person she said was Ty Domi. And I said, there's no way Ty Domi's the most iconic. No. But it says something that a guy like Ty Domi could be that big a personality in that city.
Well, that's that market.
That's what I mean,
That's crazy.
Right? They made him a star.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in between like Daryl Sittler or Matt Sundin.
See, and that's interesting because I think Sundin's like 3 on that list. Or even 4.
Yeah.
He's like the modern. He's like the people born after 1985. Think about Matt Sundin as the face of the Leafs. No, see, I would go. Here's my 2, and Sittler for me is like on this list too. So here's my 3. I'll do it that way: Daryl Sittler, David Keon, and Wendell Clark.
Okay.
Because Wendell Clark's.
Well, don't you see Wendell Clark with? Wasn't he with Philly for a good time?
No, you're thinking Bobby Clark.
Yeah, interesting.
David Keon probably is like the intellectual pick considering sort of the impact, but I think Daryl Sittler kind of is still just the guy. Like you think of what the biggest sort of achievements are, and that's a big one, and he sits right there. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably not old enough to really appreciate like old Toronto Maple Leafs lore, nor have I ever really paid enough attention.
Or guys like that.
Yeah, see, I think it's got to be someone in like the 60, 70, 80 range, year-wise.
Right.
The heyday of the NHL. What do we want to do? Daryl Sittler?
What about Doug Gilmour?
Could be Gilmour too. He could be on that list. He's probably 4. Maybe he's 4 and Sundin's 5. That's a good point.
Oh, I'm really losing points here in my trivia with thinking guys were playing in places they weren't.
Okay, here's the thing, though. I think what we're going to have to offer up here is if you've got some, like, if there's, like, a diehard Maple Leaf fan listening to this, and I apologize if there is, you need to tweet us or follow us on Instagram or Facebook and let us know who you think this would be. This applies for everything, obviously. Please do that.
And if you say John Tavares, we're not including
or the little snot. The kid. Neither of those two count.
Marner.
No, not Marner.
You're talking
about Matthews. And I'm sorry, but Curtis Joseph is not the most iconic Toronto Maple Leaf of all time.
No, he's higher up on the Oilers' most icons, though.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, what do we want to do? Daryl Sittler, David Keon, or Wendell Clark? Which one do we want to go with?
I'm going to go with Sittler.
All right, I will agree with that. I will go with Daryl Sittler as well. We did pretty well there for the Atlantic Division. We didn't have any
But Ty Domi.
I didn't tell you this either. If we do come to a place where we can't agree on one, we're going to decide it by a coin toss. And
okay,
I'm
got one over here.
No, I was gonna flip the coin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the Metro Division. Or here, no. You know what? Just for fun, we'll go to the West and we'll go back to the East and we'll go to the West to finish. So let's go to the Central Division. And the Central Division's the little division in the new configuration of the NHL. It has one less team than the other 3 divisions because Vegas is in the Pacific now.
Well, that doesn't make it little, just...
Well,
it's just, a little bit...
smaller.
It's just lacking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Central Division, and we'll start with the Chicago Blackhawks. That's a team that, again, has a pretty deep lineage, but has had sort of like 2 main... sort of iconic team groupings, let's call it. There's the Bobby Hall, Stan Mikita era. There's the Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith era. I guess there's sort of an era in the middle, but I don't feel like the most iconic player comes out of that. Who for you is the most iconic Chicago Blackhawk?
What about Tony Esposito?
There you go. There's a good one.
No, it's got to be Bobby Hall, I think.
See, and I
it's such an old franchise.
I know, and that's why I go with Stan Mikita.
Well, there you go. Good for you. I'm going with Bobby Hall.
Okay, so I think we're going to have to flip a coin on this one.
Well, Bobby Hall played longer.
Yeah, but Stan Mikita was sort of like innovative and sort of changed the game in a different way.
But was he the face of the franchise?
Yeah, I think he was. I think it was a 1-2 punch in a different way. I think so.
All right, well, want me to flip that coin?
All right, let's go with the coin. I'll take heads.
Okay. That was it. It fell. It was spinning a bit, and then it fell. And it's heads. Dang it.
Stan Mikita for the win. All right, if you don't agree with us, follow us on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Probably could be Bobby Hall. That's an easy one to debate because I think that, again, there's a lot of good players on that one. Okay, let's stay in the Central Division. We're going to go with Colorado. Colorado, and I guess you could. This is the one. This is another team you could go back to the Nordiques, but they didn't really have enough of a success in Quebec City to really count as having a player, I think, that would make this list. So we'll stick with the...
This one's tricky with me. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Because, again, you had a team that won the Stanley Cup with some very iconic players.
Like who?
I have to... Well, Joe Sakic.
The captain.
And Patrick Forsberg.
Peter Forsberg.
Rather, Peter, my apologies. And Patrick Waugh, that's who I was thinking. Patrick Waugh, though. I mean, and then you've got Adam Foote, Ray Bourque. I know Ray Bourque only played a year there, but yeah, you had a heck of a team. Anyway, I'm going to have to go with Joe Sakic.
All right, we may have to debate
because he was the cornerstone. The reason I'm not going with Patrick was he didn't start there.
Yeah, but I think once he got there, he sort of became I just feel like it was Patrick Waugh's team. He was the biggest star there. Like Joe Sakic, the other thing, the challenge for Joe Sakic is he's kind of an understated guy, right?
From that organization.
Yeah, I know that, but he's sort of a quieter guy. Patrick Waugh was just he was like an icon of the time too. I think he's just a bigger player.
He totally was. Well, if you're going forward in goaltending again, there's your two.
All right, which one we want? You're gonna go with Joe. You know what? I'll give you that one. I'll go with Joe Sakic.
It's Joe.
Burnaby Joe.
Jumbo.
Burnaby Joe, the most iconic Colorado Avalanche of all time. All right, same sort of time period or generation as far as their most iconic players. I think all come from in the Dallas Stars because the same late '90s, early 2000s are their sort of they won a Stanley Cup. They with Ed Belford and Ken Hitchcock, and obviously we talked already about their finals against Buffalo and Brett Hall, obviously. So who is the most iconic Dallas Star of all time?
This is hard. It's Brett Hall.
No.
It might be Mike Madano.
It has to be Mike Madano.
If
you're going to go with Joe Sakic for Colorado, it has to be Mike Madano.
Oh, but
Mike
love
Madano
Brett Hall.
is the highest scoring American-born player of all time. That's ahead of Brett Hall. He's there. You wanted to go with Joe Sakic, saying he was an original from Colorado who played
Marty
in
Turco. There were so many good players.
Yeah, of course. And Ed Belford.
That team had a good.
But for me, Mike Madano starts with them in Minnesota. He makes the move to Dallas. He wins them Stanley Cups as the captain. He's the guy.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna go with you on this.
Don't worry, Brett Hall's gonna show up again later. Minnesota.
That's true, but he's not gonna.
And this isn't the North Stars. This is the Wild.
The Minnesota Wild, you say?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a pretty easy one, but the sad thing is that in terms of the caliber of the other players on this list, I don't feel he's in the same league, which says something unfortunately about the quality of players that Minnesota's been able to have.
Interesting.
He's a great player, but he's not a Hall of Famer. And most of the players we've listed so far are, if not Hall of Famers, very close. I mean, I don't know about Roberto Luongo.
Are you thinking Marian Gaborik?
No, actually, I wasn't thinking Marian Gaborik, although that you could make an argument for Marian Gaborik.
Let me try to think if I know who you're thinking of. Doesn't play anymore?
No, still plays for them. I think. Actually, I could be wrong, but I think he still plays for them. I'm going to Google that.
Is it Mikko Koivu?
It is Mikko Koivu. Mikko Koivu'd been there for so long. He's the face of that franchise.
Yeah.
And this is a hard one again because it's not like they've had enough success to really have a standout player.
Well, they had Brent Burns, but they got rid of him, I guess, right around the time.
Before he really became
turning the corner.
Yeah.
Before the beard happened, yeah. Ooh, that's tricky. I still think it's Marion. It's hard. I want to go with Marion Gaborik. But I think I agree with you just in the sense that Mikko Koivu's still there.
I think he's moved on. Let's see here.
Has he?
No, he still plays for the Minnesota.
No.
Yeah, you're right. He's
the captain.
Yeah, he's still playing there. Wow. And he's been there for how long? I mean, he's been there for a while. I don't know.
When did he get drafted?
He moved to he moved to play for the. He's played his entire career with Minnesota because he started in the AHL. He moved over from Finland, played for the AHL Houston Aeros, who were the farm team of the Wild. Moved up to the Wild. He's been there since 2004.
Wow. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so I think that's it for me. It's Mikko Koivu, but I think Marion Gaborik's a fair runner-up.
I mean, he really took off there.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of fell apart later.
Well, injury, age. He was a little guy too, I think. I think Marion Gaborik's pretty little.
Okay, so here's another expansion team. 1 year before Minnesota and Columbus came in, the first of the 2000 generation expansion teams, the Nashville Predators.
Oof. Well,
because they've also had an interesting
like
history,
someone.
Right? So you got to kind of go back to who was there at the beginning. For a long time, I would argue it was David Legwand because he was like one of the original entry draft guys.
Okay,
he was there from the beginning, but he just wasn't enough of an impact. And then they've had success with other players. Then there comes who I think is the front runner. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, are you gonna? Do you want me to? No, you should say.
Okay.
I think it's... No, you should say.
Okay. So I have two guys. One of them comes in first, and he's no longer there, and that's Shea Weber. Because for so long, Shea Weber was Nashville. But Nashville's success now, and even for the last 5 to 6 years, is credited to Pekka Rinne. And I think Pekka Rinne is almost surpassing Weber, and maybe in a couple years he will. But PK Subban's chomping at that heel too. Now, he's not there yet with that franchise, but I think one day he will be if he stays there long enough. But I still think it's Shea Weber, because for a decade, Shea Weber was the biggest attraction in Nashville, and he's winning hardest shot competitions at All-Star games. He's a perennial sort of All-Star. He was recognized as one of the best defensemen in the league the whole time he was there, and he was the captain. He was the face of that team. Now, they never made it as far as they did after they got rid of him, to be fair. But again, it's a younger franchise. It's a tougher selection. Anyway, that my vote would go to Shea Weber, but a close runner-up for me would be Pekka Rinne.
Yeah, and it's funny because the first person I was thinking was Jason Arnott as well.
He was there right at the beginning, that's true.
Right near the end of his career, though.
Yeah.
But no, I got to go with Shea Weber, man. It's Shea Weber.
Yeah, I agree.
It will always be Shea Weber.
I agree. Okay, we go to the St. Louis Blues, a historically underachieving hockey team. A team that is, for as long as they've been in the league, it's shocking they've not only never won a Stanley Cup, but never even really got close.
You know who they have now, hey?
Who?
Patrick Maroon.
They do have Patrick Maroon. And I think they re-signed David Perron, too? Coming out of Vegas.
Yeah, they got a
They've just had a historical problem with goaltending, right? Jake Allen hasn't worked. Before that, they had what's his name? A kid who went to. He's been all over the league now too. Oh bugger! I can see him, but I can't think of his name. Anyway, they've struggled.
So St. Louis, this one's tricky.
St. Louis, I don't think it's as tricky as it looks, but I have two players. So you go first, and then I'll tell you who they are.
Okay, so Brett Hall.
Yeah, that's the obvious one.
And I mean, next to Wayne Gretzky, because he's going to be an icon anywhere he goes, it's the booming shot of Al MacInnis.
Okay, so then we have three players, because Al MacInnis, I think, is right there, too. Because Al MacInnis was there longer than Hall and sort of defined that team. Now, I would also argue, though, that even though his success came later, Chris Pronger is also one of the most iconic St. Louis Blues.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if that's where his Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't think he's the most iconic, though.
So let's scratch him off.
I'm
okay with that. That's fair. Al MacInnis and Brett Hull. I still think it's Brett Hull.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with you.
I think MacInnis, like, this is one of the closer ones. This is a photo finish for sure. But I think Brett Hull squeaks through just because, again, of the, like, impact and iconic nature of Brett Hull there. And yeah, you know, Wayne Gretzky was there for what, like 3/4 of a season, and it was a big mess because he and Hall couldn't make it work. But Brett Hull, I think, is, yeah, sure, he wins the Stanley Cup later with Dallas, but you think of him first as a St. Louis Blue, don't you?
For sure.
Okay, we're gonna go with Brett Hull, and we'll go with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, we agreed at the beginning of this that it would be both generations, so the original Jets, and we'd let that team die when they moved to Arizona. We'll talk about that as its own thing, and we'll include in this the new Jets, excluding whoever played for them in Atlanta, unless they came over all the way. Who is the most iconic Winnipeg Jet of all time?
Like, probably Dale Hawerchuk.
That's mine, too. I agree with you. I don't think he is for very long. I think Patrick Laine and some of the young guys there will probably be better than him in a decade and
sure.
Take that. But I agree. I don't think there's a more... And, like, you could say Teemu Selanne, but Teemu Selanne was there for such a short time.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's Dale Hawerchuk, too. Okay, we're going to...
Okay, enough about Winnipeg.
We'll agree on that one. Let's go back to the Metro division. And we'll run down some of these. Some of these, again, might be pretty easy, and some of them might be a little bit trickier. It was funny, the Atlantic, we kind of agreed on almost everything, except for Toronto. That was a bit of a trickier one. But that Central Division got messy.
But whoever agrees on Toronto.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's go to the Metro, and we're not including the Hartford Whalers in the Carolina conversation. Who is the most iconic Carolina Hurricane of all time? And you cannot say
Eric
Cam
Stahl.
Ward.
No, it's Eric.
You think so? See, I would go further back, and I would argue it's Ron Francis. That's who I would say.
Yeah, I just forgot. I forgot because he's in the front office, so I thought, no, he doesn't count. But I forgot how good he was. Rob Brind'Amour, too.
Yeah, but Brind'Amour's best days were in Philly. He just finished in Carolina.
Ah, okay. Right.
And I think just an honorable mention,
sure.
because we mentioned some other goaltenders. There's not a lot of goalies on this list, but the other goalie that I think needs credit just because he was iconic in his moment was Artis Urbe and those bright white pads before that was like a thing in the NHL. Now every goalie wants to wear white pads. But you remember Artis Urbe in that Stanley Cup final trip against the Detroit Red Wings they had in like 2002 or something?
No, definitely
He and
not.
Hasek were the only two. He and Osgood too, but they were the only 3 or 4 goalies with those old Cooper helmet masks too. Artis Urbe. Okay, Ron Francis, we agree on. Most iconic Carolina Hurricane. All right, Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't think it's a player that's there. I think you have to go back to Rick Nash.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick Nash.
Sure.
All right, this one I think is like maybe the easiest, one of the easiest, right up there with like Bobby Orr. This is the easiest one for me. The New Jersey Devils.
You think this is easy, hey?
Oh, it's so easy. Are you kidding me?
Well, okay, let me run by some of my options here.
Okay.
Because Scott Stevens deserves an honorable mention.
Okay.
And so does Scott Niedermayer.
All right.
But if you're thinking Martin Brodeur,
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Okay. Martin Brodeur it is.
Scott Niedermayer, though, is...
is great hockey team. Another, like Colorado. Yeah. Like, you got a bunch of Hall of Famers in there. You could easily make arguments for several of them if they were on other teams. They just happen to be playing in front of one of the most generationally strong goalies of the time. I can't believe we're putting Brodeur on this list and not Patrick Waugh, though. The New York Islanders. This one's easy for me, too. And it's not Jonathan Tavares. It's Mike Bossy. The New York Rangers, I think, is easy, too. And they've got a storied franchise, but I still think there's the most iconic Ranger. The first person you think of. No, come on.
The first person I think of was Mike Richter, just for clarification. But
I guarantee you, It's not Mike Richter.
And it's not Brian Leetch.
No, I guarantee you it's not Brian Leetch.
Like Messier?
Of course it's Mark Messier. Are you kidding me? The 94 Stanley Cup final. Like, that's Mark Messier's team, and I think he will always be the most iconic Ranger.
There you go.
Philadelphia. I think you already said this guy's name earlier. You just thought his first name was Wendell.
Yeah, so Wendell Clark.
Bobby Clark, for sure. You know that Bobby Clark, Wayne Gretzky said that one of the reasons he started playing behind the net was because growing up watching Bobby Clark, who was an undersized player, he recognized that Bobby would go behind the net to gain more space because he was always getting beat up around the front, and Wayne sort of patented that after, made it much more efficient than Clark, but he always credited Clark for that. So there's a little piece of trivia on the side. Pittsburgh.
Bit there, eh?
Pittsburgh's an interesting one because we've talked a couple times about teams that have like a younger generation that's sort of catching up to some of their stars. And I think one of the challenges to Mario Lemieux is the fact that his career was sort of like abruptly halted with his cancer. And then, of course, he came back, but he wasn't the same player when he came back. But he was so prolific when he first was there that he's sort of the obvious pick. But I think there's an argument to be made that Sidney Crosby's right there neck and neck with him.
Yeah.
You know, Sidney Crosby's won more Stanley Cups than him. You know, the team's sort of identity is just as wrapped around those two players. But for you, who is it, Lemieux or Crosby for the Pittsburgh Penguins?
It's Lemieux.
Yeah. I think it's still Lemieux. I think Crosby, like, this might be the closest, like, 1A and 1B in the league.
Yeah.
I think this is right there. And, I mean, look, it's impressive when you think of it. It's Mario Lemieux, it's Sidney Crosby, and then it's Jaromir Jagr, who's the second all-time NHL scorer. Like, the team's had some stars.
Not to walk backwards on our conversation here, but to walk backwards on our conversation, who did we say for Philly?
Bobby Clark.
Yeah, I still agree. I was just reminded of Eric Lindros, but
but Lindros didn't do anything. Like, Bobby Clark and Philly were like really dominant. Eric Lindros was just sort of like dominant on his own. I think that one goes back to, what team are we talking about? There's a team we mentioned that's like, it depends when you were born that you identified the team a certain way. Like, it was Matt Sundin for the Leafs. I think that's the same thing with Eric Lindros. Anyone born after like 85, Eric Lindros is the Philadelphia Flyers.
Sounds good.
I think it's Bobby Clark. All right, this one's easy too, I think. Washington Capitals.
Yeah. The great
Peter Bondra, right? Peter Bondra? No, not Peter Bondra.
Or Olaf Kolzig.
Olaf Kolzig was number 2 on my list of potentials. That's a good one too. No, it's got to be Ovechkin. And a shout out to, or hats off to Alex Ovechkin. He won the Male Athlete of the Year at the ESPYs last night.
He also won the award for longest hangover in an NHL season. He'll be getting next year. Yeah.
Okay, we come down to the final division in our list. We have 8 teams left. They're in the Pacific Division, and they begin with the Anaheim Ducks, or if you prefer a slightly older vintage, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks.
Oh.
And I think my player is from that ilk. You could make an argument for Getzlaf in the modern generation. I don't think you can quite make an argument for J.S. Shiger, although he might be on the list of like top 5 most iconics, just because he won the Conn Smythe on a losing team in one of the most iconic playoff runs. But I think there's 2 guys who really have to be debated here, and they're from the older generation. Same generation as J.S. Shiger, but older than the modern generation. And for me, that's
I think it's
Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne.
Yeah.
I personally would vote Selanne by just a little bit, because I think, again, it comes down to that argument of, like, he was a slightly more, I don't know, like vibrant character and became a little bit more of like the brand identity than Paul Kariya, who's a little more understated but no less skilled. Well,
that's because he got his brain knocked out of his head.
Yeah, but even before that, he was always the quieter guy.
Yeah, but I think he was a better leader. I think he was a much stronger captain. He led by example. His skill was off the charts.
Yeah, but Teemu Selanne is like first ballot Hall of Famer. It took a few years for Paul Kariya.
Okay, 2 years. Isn't Teemu ready for the Hall now? Why hasn't he been selected?
They did. They went in together.
All right. What else can I think
of?
They
went in together. They went in together. You're
damn
right.
It. All right.
What do you think?
I think it's
Paul Kariya. Team. Okay, you're gonna have to flip a coin. I don't think you can convince me it's Paul.
All right. I flipped the last one, and it's your turn.
Oh, I'm flipping. Okay. All right. Here it goes. That was a big coin. Oh wait, we didn't pick it. Shit. You gotta pick heads or tails there. I'll flip it again.
All right. Heads for Paul Kariya's head.
All right, here we go. I don't. Whoa! I didn't even look at this before. This is terrible. I can't believe I have this loonie in my pocket. This is a Toronto Maple Leafs commemorative loonie. I'll put a picture of it up on Twitter. I don't know why. Why would the Mint do that? I guess because.
Why do you have that?
Did they start in 1917? I don't know. 2017. Anyway, it was tails. What did you pick?
I picked heads.
Oh, shoot. It's Team Mussolini.
All right.
That's a good one though. Again, just like Pittsburgh, that's like a 1A and 1B.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. My hat is off to the Anaheim Ducks, the mighty Anaheim Ducks, for bringing back their old school retro jerseys for their third jerseys next year. That's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, so did the Arizona Coyotes, who are up next. Did you see that?
Also looking forward to that.
Okay, Arizona. Or if you prefer the Phoenix Coyotes. We're not going to go back as far as Winnipeg, but the Coyotes of the Desert. Who do you have?
I think it's Shane Doan.
I agree. I don't think there's a question there, to be honest. I mean, maybe Sean Burke, but I think it's Shane Doan.
Or Keith Tkachuk. He was bigger in St. Louis, I guess, wasn't he?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting we never brought him up in St. Louis. We'll go with Shane Doan. Okay, Calgary. Now, here's an interesting team, too, because there's a couple generations, too, but, like... I think they're still the most iconic Flame. For me, it's very easy, but let's see what you say.
Well,
Calgary Flames.
I think the most iconic is Lanny McDonald.
But his career there was so short. It's just prolific because they won a cup.
Well, and that's what made him an icon there, right?
That's true.
Jerome McGinley never won a cup.
True.
So that's my argument, but I am a big Iginla fan, so I'm going to have to go with Jerome Iginla.
All right. I'm going to go with Jerome Iginla, too.
All right.
I like that.
It's good we agreed because I couldn't spare any more breath talking about the Flames.
I don't even know who else would be on that list, to be completely honest. Maybe you can make an argument for Theo Fleury, but
that's
really.
True. I liked that guy. He was cool.
Okay. The Edmonton Oilers.
What? You going straight to the Oilers?
You want me to come back to them? I feel like it's a pretty easy no-brainer. I'm going alphabetically here.
All right. So there's the great one. Let's just get over with it, I guess.
That's a funny one too, right? Because this is a team that if it didn't have that one player, the debate would be so much harder because they have like 5 other Hall of Famers and all these other iconic players. We talked about Ryan Smith at one point. You could be making an argument, even though he never won, he's sort of like integral to the franchise. Obviously the kid coming up, but I think it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. It's not even a question mark for Wayne Gretzky.
But then Connor McDavid has to be number 2, right?
Not yet though. I don't think he is. I know,
but I think he is.
No, I think Grant Fuhr or Mark Messier is number 2 right now. Right now, today.
Right now. It's going to be close. It's going to be really, really soon that changes.
That's the hope. All right, here's where I think there is an interesting argument that involves Mr. Wayne Gretzky, and that's the Los Angeles Kings. For me, Wayne Gretzky is also the Los Angeles Kings' most iconic player. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, that's hard. Only because they don't have a plethora of other incredible talent over the years.
Right.
I don't think.
You mean you could put Luc Robitaille on the list?
Well, that's what I'm thinking of right now. But
you could put Marcel Dion on the list?
Yeah, it's still so hard to be able to compare that to Gretzky, even though Gretzky was only there for,
a few years, but he did take them almost all the way back to the Cup. Or he did take them to the Cup. They lost to Montreal. He was iconic while he was there. He defined hockey in California, changed the NHL. you could argue he's still right. Like he is at the peak of his majesty while he's there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like saying, who's the most iconic Cleveland Cavalier? Well, it's LeBron James. In the same breath, I can say, who's the most iconic Miami Heat player? And you have a very hard time arguing it's not Dwayne Wade. Yeah. But LeBron's right there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's hard. I think you're right, though. Like, just in terms of the other competition in that category, Luc Robitaille is definitely up there as well.
For me, he's number 2. Marcel Dion's number 3. Wayne Gretzky's easily number 1.
Yeah.
And, of course, he'd be on 2 teams, and that iconic. So let's go.
Right.
Okay, let's go upstate of LA to the San Jose Sharks. And I don't know. For me, there's only one player I think of.
I know.
Although I would really love to be able to write down Evgeny Nabokov because it's a fun name. But I really... Did he play for San Jose?
Yeah.
Briefly?
Like,
I mean, it's either Patrick Marlowe or Joe Thornton for me.
Yeah, I think it's Patrick Marlowe.
Really?
Yeah.
Over Thornton?
Yeah, only because a lot of the same principles that we talked about. Like, Joe Thornton had a bit of a career in Boston before. I don't know. I think it's... I'm gonna stand Patrick Marlowe.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But Devin Setaguchi's really close too.
Or Jonathan Chichu.
Yeah.
All right. Here's an interesting one. The Vancouver Canucks. Most iconic player. You have a list. Here's the list as far as I see it. We'll go backwards in time. I think it's Trevor Linden, Pavel Bure, Marcus Naslund, or the Sedins. And I do say them as one thing because it's not one or the other. They're a package. And they probably have a slight edge. But I think you have to sort of accept Marcus Naslund's, like, he's in the 5, but he's not on the top of it. Trevor Linden and Pavel Bure take them to the Stanley Cup Finals in the 90s. The Sedins take them to the Stanley Cup Finals in the 2000s. Neither team wins. Did you hear that, Vancouver? You've never won a Stanley Cup. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
They lost to Boston, didn't they? A few years ago.
I think it was Boston, in Game 7. They just couldn't pull it out. They had a 2-0 lead in the series, too.
Yeah.
Not that we should be talking about Game 7s, Braydon. Too soon?
So, I love Marcus Naslund. Like, I love him. He's one of the best players I've ever watched play hockey. I just love how he played. And he had a great flow. But I think it's the Sedins.
I agree. I think it has to be the Sedins. And I mean, shout out to Pavel Bure. It was just too short a time period. And I think that Trevor Linden's like the Mark Messier behind Gretzky with the Oilers. Like, he's right there too because he's sort of like one generation's most iconic player. But the Sedins, when you actually consider the fact that you have to take them as a package, are just, it's overwhelming, right? It's one of the coolest stories.
And that's what I was just going to say, the story. And when you think about Vancouver, you're going to think about that story for a very long time.
Yeah, I think it defines the franchise.
And when we finally get into, player personnel and sorry, what am I trying to say? The head office, the top, the most iconic head office figures. Brian Burke cemented his icon legacy.
Status right there. Yeah, for
sure. That right there. Yeah.
I agree. Okay.
That was really hard for me to get out just there. I had a hard time.
That's okay. You did very well. All right, here's a challenging one, and this is only because it's got the smallest sample size. The Las Vegas Golden Knights.
Oof. Like the icon of the future or the icon of the past?
Well, I mean, maybe he's the same person.
So
but
I
obviously,
disagree. I think there's an icon that came in with the team, and I think there's a new icon heading forward.
All right, let's hear it.
So Marc-Andre Fleury was set to be the icon for the Vegas Golden Knights. And now, no disrespect, because he probably is and will continue to be an icon for the Golden Knights moving forward. But William Karlsson is the icon and one of the best young, up-and-comers in the NHL moving forward. He will be an NHL superstar with the Vegas
like face of the franchise icon status, it's still
William Karlsson
moving
forward.
Will be.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but today
it's Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah,
okay, we go with who it is today. That's fair. Just as perhaps the future icon of the Winnipeg Jets is Patrik Laine, the future icon of the Edmonton Oilers is Connor McDavid, the future icon of blah 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 blah. It goes down the list. There you go. We did it. 31 teams. That was pretty good. Let's just run down it real quick. So we have
exhausting.
This reorganized, and we're gonna post our picks. They'll be on Instagram on the HatTrick Instagram. So follow us there. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. This is a new stream. I've only had a couple episodes up here. So if you previously subscribed and you clicked on this link somewhere else, subscribe so that you're up to date. We're gonna have another episode coming out right away. We'll talk about the Raptors off season, and the NBA's off season.
Oh my gosh! Can we get that off my chest now?
No, we'll save it. And
I'm sweating.
And we'll talk about the NHL off season, and we'll talk about some other third topic yet to be determined. Okay, so really quickly, running down the list of our teams: Boston Bruins, Bobby Orr; Buffalo Sabres, Dominic Hasek; the Detroit Red Wings, Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe; the Florida Panthers, number 1, Roberto Luongo; Montreal, we went with the Rocket Richard, Maurice Rocket Richard; Ottawa and the Senators, Daniel Alfredson; Tampa Bay and the Lightning, Vincent Lecavalier; Toronto, this is the one we struggled a little bit with, Daryl Sittler. We went to the Central Division next. We said Chicago by coin flip went to Stan Mikita. The Colorado Avalanche, Braydon convinced me to relinquish Patrick Waugh and accept Joe Sakic as the all-time Colorado Avalanche. The Dallas Stars, Mike Madano. The Minnesota Wild, we went with not Saku, Mikko Koivu. The Nashville Predators, we went with Shea Weber and his Howlitzer from the point. St. Louis, we didn't go with the Howlitzer from the point, the original hardest shot, Al McInnes. We went instead with the Golden Jet, Brett Hall. No, he couldn't be the Golden Jet. He's the Golden Brett. His dad was the Golden Jet. Because the Jets didn't have Brett Hall, but the Jets did have Dale Hawerchuk, who wins for Winnipeg. Metro Division.
Hey, that was smooth. That was
Carolina. We went with Ron Francis. Shout out to Eric Stahl with close runner-up. But Ron Francis for Carolina. Rick Nash for Columbus and the Blue Jackets. The New Jersey Devils and the goalie of a generation, Martin Brodeur. The New York Islanders and the guy who Wayne and the Oilers eventually would have to overcome to become champions, Mike Bossy and his dynasty of the late 70s. The New York Rangers, we went with the captain, Mark Messier. Philadelphia, we went with the toothless wonder, Bobby Clark. Pittsburgh was tight too because we argued Crosby and Lemieux were close, but Super Mario wins it out for Pittsburgh. And Washington, the Great Eight, Alex Ovechkin. The Pacific Division and the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and I say that because Teemu Selanne never played for the Anaheim Ducks. Or maybe he did, actually. He was there for so long.
He did.
The Arizona Coyotes, he played with them when they were Phoenix. He even played with them technically when they were back in Winnipeg. That was Shane Doan. Calgary, we went with Jerome McGinley. Do you think Jerome McGinley retires this year officially, considering he never played last year?
If he ever comes out of a hole.
Yeah, because the day he does, they're going to retire his jersey in Calgary.
Oh, for sure.
The Edmonton Oilers, we went with the Great One, and we went with the Great One a second time for the Los Angeles Kings. So Wayne Gretzky goes 2 for 2. San Jose, we went with Patrick Marlowe by coin flip. Or maybe I conceded that one. We went with coin flip for Selanne. So shout out to Paul Correa. Vancouver gets an asterisk, and technically they get 2 players because it's the Sedin twins. And the Vegas Golden Knights, after their Cinderella storied first year, Marc-Andre Fleury. We went with the bonus question for the Atlanta Thrashers. Did we agree it was Danny Heatley or Ilya Kovalchuk?
I still think it's Kovalchuk, but Heatley was pretty good back then.
All right, well, that one doesn't really matter because the team never survived because the fans never showed up. Okay, there you have it. Those are the NHL icons. The iconic player for every single NHL team. We will post the results on Instagram. Thank you for joining us. Braydon, as always, it was a pleasure.
Yes, it was.
What fun. We'll do it again soon.
Jolly good time.
HatTrick is presented by the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced by Jordan Dowler-Coltman with the assistance and support of Braydon Dowler-Coltman and Elliot Tanti. Associate producer, Larice Campbell. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to stay up to date and to know when the next episode's coming. You can also subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.